Hello there friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. The Jedi seek to control oneself by removing all attachments and emotions. They want to see the world with clarity and not swayed by chemical impulses and hormones. This is a hard life, one devoid of the finer things in life like love. It requires the ultimate discipline from an individual. The Sith, on the other hand, believe in complete chaos within oneself and in the world around them. There were no limits to the Sith, no line they wouldn't cross when prying knowledge and power from the Force. But without control and temperance and exposure to high levels of dark side energy, many Sith Lords were also predisposed to a variety of mental illnesses caused by a change in their brain structure and being surrounded by chaos. And so today we'll be taking a look at some mental illnesses that commonly afflict dark side Force users. Because here on this YouTube channel, we don't do the videos that you guys ask for. We do the videos that no one asks for. And also, I'm not a doctor or a psychologist. My expertise in these matters are solely driven by optimism and belief in myself. All right, let's go. Patricide, or the killing of one's father, is not a mental illness in itself, but there are significant studies that show that patricide is oftentimes caused by some underlying mental illness and/or an abusive relationship between the father and usually the son. The strange thing is that almost every Sith Lord that I could think about has committed patricide and had a terrible relationship with their father. It's almost like a prerequisite 101 course for becoming a Sith Lord. Even more importantly, the patricide that they commit is oftentimes one of the first homicides that future Sith Lords participate in, and it usually marks the beginning of his path to the dark side. Let's take a look at some examples. First up is Darth Vitiate, or the original Sith Emperor. He was the son of a poor farmer's wife and a local Sith Lord. After his stepfather found out about his mother's affair with the Sith Lord, he attacked her. This caused Darth Vitiate to kill his stepfather and at the same time his mother because he's a complete psychopath. And then he also would eventually kill his actual father, the local Sith Lord. Darth Plagueis was also responsible for killing his entire family, including his father, who he hated. And Darth Sidious did the same thing as well to his entire family and also to his father as well. They also mutually hated each other. Darth Bane's first murder victim was also his own father, who was an abusive and angry cortosis miner. One could even argue that Kylo Ren killed his own father, Han Solo, in order to show his commitment to the dark side, although their relationship is a bit more complicated than the other true Sith individuals. It should also be noted that most of the fathers in these situations not only hated their sons, but also feared them and saw them for the monsters they actually were, which is probably what led to their deaths in the first place. It's here we ask the question, were these future Sith Lords born evil and full of hatred and malice, or was it the father's lack of love, outward competitiveness, and abuse that made these children into murderers? It's well known that murder can be committed by perfectly sane people who are just impassioned or put into very tense situations. But to murder one's own family, and at such a young age and with such purpose and planning, speaks to another type of individual who might not be completely sane. Psychopathy is characterized by a lack of empathy, boldness, and inclination towards violence, manipulation, impulsivity, and narcissism. Almost every Sith Lord shares some of these traits and could be diagnosed as a psychopath. A Sith Lord is ultimately a very unbalanced individual who is consumed by the need to gain power for oneself. Although there is no correlation between psychopathy and IQ, it also seems like most Sith Lords are quite high-functioning and smart individuals, especially during the Rule of Two era. This allows them to be very effective in manipulating other individuals. Darth Sidious and Darth Plagueis are great examples of just how dangerous brilliant individuals with no empathy and no remorse can be. Like many Sith, they fully embrace the personality trait of Machiavellianism. They used their manipulative powers to create chaos in the Outer Rim, which eventually led to a full-blown Clone Wars. The Sith were always 2 steps ahead of their enemies, the Jedi, and that ultimately led to their annihilation. Even though Emperor Palpatine preaches stability and peace for the galaxy, the reality is his long-term Sith grand plan created a completely unnecessary war that killed billions of individuals across the galaxy and permanently damaged the economy. And he did all of this with no remorse and no empathy, because he is a psychopath. Even more interesting is the case of Revan, a former Jedi Knight and war hero during the Mandalorian Wars. The constant stress and death caused by warfare slowly made Revan less and less empathetic, to the point where he was willing to sacrifice a huge portion of his own fleet to destroy the enemy at Malachor 5. by releasing a terrifying mass shadow generator superweapon. The use of this weapon in the destruction of millions of friendly soldiers marked the end of the Jedi known as Revan and the beginning of his fall to the dark side. A Sith Lord takes pride in his own mental acuity. He would see an individual who's a bit crazed as a weaker person. The Sith seem to have a toxic mentality for these kind of things, and it's kind of ironic because many of these Sith Lords are also suffering from the adverse reaction of Sith lightning coursing to their brains, which studies have shown cause the same type of damage to the brain that we see in individuals who have suffered from traumatic brain injuries. Now, after the Second Galactic Civil War in Legends, a mysterious illness known as PSYCHOSIS started inflicting not only members of the Sith, but also members of the Jedi Order. For the most part, PSYCHOSIS shared a lot of similarities to schizophrenia. Individuals would become paranoid and believe that anyone who didn't have PSYCHOSIS was an imposter and potentially out to kill them. Another strange symptom that these patients had was the ability to use new force powers that they had never had access to. Ultimately, it was found out that a powerful dark side being known as Abeloth was manipulating the minds of force users across the galaxy, and this actually leads to a joint Sith-Jedi mission to defeat her. You also have the interesting case of ex-Jedi Kazdan Paratus. He was one of the few survivors of Order 66. The event was extremely traumatizing for him. He had fled the Jedi Temple when he saw Vader and the 501st Legion enter the main hall. And since then, he had been hiding on the junk planet of Raxus Prime and had slowly fallen into insanity while racked with guilt over his abandonment of the Jedi Order. He even built a replica of the Jedi Temple and the High Council out of trash and continued to talk to them as if they were alive. There are theories out there that say that schizophrenia is a defense mechanism, or at least an adaptive mechanism to extreme stress and horror. Given the natural terror and horror it takes to become a Sith Lord, it's not surprising that many Sith Lords probably suffer from this disorder. Obsessive compulsive disorder is an anxiety disorder that afflicts a certain percentage of the population. The stereotypical view of OCD is the individual who must wash their hands or perform other routines of cleanliness repeatedly in a very irrational way. These small routines are supposed to relieve any anxiety the individual suffering from the disorder is feeling. After Darth Plagueis was the target of a near-successful assassination attempt, he actually began withdrawing more and more from society and became obsessed with death, which is a comorbidity that often afflicts OCD sufferers. Darth Plagueis essentially turned into a hermit and a recluse, and this was all due to his obsession with dying. Darth Plagueis would spend the last few years of his life trying to bend the Force towards his will. He would also develop some paranoid beliefs that the Force itself was fighting back against him because of his unnatural experiments. His obsession with death and his work in the labs meant that he failed to watch his own apprentice Darth Sidious closely, and this would ultimately lead to his death on the eve of Palpatine's own ascension to the Chancellorship. One almost needs to have a narcissistic personality disorder to believe that they are worthy of running a galaxy-wide empire. Individuals with narcissistic personality disorder have an extremely inflated sense of their own importance, and also a deep need for attention and admiration. They also lack empathy for others. Individuals like Palpatine definitely display a lot of the character traits you would see in a narcissistic personality disorder. But he didn't really need that much attention or admiration, and beneath his extreme confidence, he didn't really have a fragile self-esteem that was vulnerable to criticism. He really did believe in himself. A better example of an individual with narcissistic personality disorder might be Shere Khan, leader and creator of the Brotherhood of Darkness. His Brotherhood was created to share power with other Dark Lords in a very democratic way. But in reality, the system was created by the weak so that they could pool their power together and stand a chance against much more powerful individuals like Darth Bane. Shere Khan wasn't a very powerful Force user, but he had plenty of charisma and was terrific at Force manipulation techniques. His entire persona, air of confidence, and false brotherhood were a mirage created to strengthen his own position and how people viewed him. But behind all of the flair, there was very little substance to Shere Khan. Mental illness is a real thing, and it's not something that only inflicts weak-minded individuals. As a matter of fact, as we learn more about mental illness, we're starting to find that there are a lot of different people out there, very high-functioning individuals with a variety of disorders. Let these Sith Lords be an inspiration to all of us, that even though a lot of these guys suffer from some pretty serious mental disorders, they're still able to do a lot with their lives and make I wouldn't say great impact on the galaxy, but they definitely made an impact. Well guys, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.